Hello, everyone. We're back at the True Breakthrough podcast, and today we have our special guest, Rich Russo. Rich, it's very nice to have you on.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we wanted to talk with you because you're extremely successful, and we want to know your journey from where you started off, which is not even in Columbus, Ohio. It was all the way in Staten Island. And I wanted to ask you, what was your experience like growing up there? Because a lot of real estate agents, you have to be networking a lot, you have to be talking a lot. And as a kid, were you this outgoing person or were you still really shy back then?
I was fairly outgoing
Mm.
as a kid. Went to, public schools in New York, went to PS 53 and IS 24, and then went to an all boys Catholic high school. Um, did really well in math, and then went to school in Philadelphia, St. Joe's University, and started out as a math major actually, and then
Oh, really?
switched over to financial management. And Um, from there, did an internship both on Wall Street and worked in downtown Philly for a few years before moving to Naples, Florida for 5, and then finally moving to Columbus in 1997. So been bounced around for
Oh,
the
really?
early
Oh.
part of my life, and I've settled in Columbus now for the last 27 or so years, 28 years.
Can I ask where did you intern in Wall Street?
I did an internship for Northwestern Mutual Life on
Mhm.
I think it was 61 Broadway in the financial district, and then
Mhm.
Um, I started working for Northwestern Mutual as a junior in college in their college program, and then went straight from college to Northwestern Mutual and worked in downtown Philly for a few years, and then worked for Northwestern in Florida for about 5 years.
Okay. And then so you've worked there a decent while. I'm interested why you decided to make the move all the way out to Columbus. I know your grandma started a real estate office there and then your uncle did his name was Art, right?
Correct.
And so what was the thinking behind that to basically start a whole new life?
So Art had some health issues and had no children, and I just came up to help him to start working with him for a long time, and we worked together for 20 years, and then 20 and then I went out on and opened up my own brokerage after that.
Mhm.
So the goal was obviously to come and, work with him for a while, which we did.
Mhm, that makes sense. So you move over to Columbus, you starting off as a real estate agent. How difficult was it for you to get accustomed to the work style of a real estate agent? Because it's different than a normal 9 to 5. It's you're constantly out, you're constantly
Yeah, so
y
you remember I was in selling insurance and investments,
mm,
so I had never had a job where you got paid, right? You had to kill what you ate, right,
mhm,
every day. So, the training through insurance was really strong with Northwestern's background. And that's helped me a lot on, we had to make 50 cold calls every morning, and we had to go out
oh,
and see people every day. And, when you're asking people to buy life insurance, disability insurance, and put money into their 401k, it's not a friendly call.
yeah, I could
So,
imagine.
until you learn how to get referrals and network with people and get people to see you, I was always able to get people to see me, right?
Mhm,
Um, I was always able to work my way through the door, but then you had to accomplish something, and that was the hard part for me, was at that point getting from the door to getting people to buy life insurance or disability insurance or annuities, and to that fact, and that took a little bit. And it started going well. Had some good years. Um, and then had the opportunity to come to Columbus and work with my uncle, and Um, just transferred that mentality of a client relation based business as to an area type how product based business,
yeah,
um, which is done very well from us. So, the motto in my office is we chase relationships,
mhm,
not deals, right? Where most agents are chasing a deal. A client relationship is the most important thing to me and to the people that work for me, with me. I don't
mm,
want to say work for me, work with me. Um, we focus on our client relationships. That's what's most important to us, because the relationship's what wins, and through the winning that's mutual, then everybody succeeds, right?
yeah,
Um, and it also then generates referrals and other types of business and cross business, and how to do one thing to another, and then you're dealing with moms and dads and kids, and Like, I've sold more kids' houses to my client more like, because 'cause I've been doing this for so long, right? I've seen kids from their first steps, and then I've literally sold them their first house. So, having that relationship with with my clients has been what has made us successful, as opposed to we farm an area, we do a deal, and we work in this location. It's not a location business for us, it's a
Yeah.
people business for us.
Uh-huh. Do you have any stories from your insurance days that taught you that lesson? Because it seems like you already knew that by the time you started in real estate.
Well, that's how they teach you to sell insurance with the better companies is you go out and you build a relationship, and you don't judge anybody by how they look, what they wear, or just you try to learn about the person, um, as much as you can so you can actually help them with their goals and what their needs are. And again, we just transferred that thought to the real estate side of the business, which again which is atypical because they'll tell you to go out and farm, or they'll tell you to go out and pick a location and, oh, I sell in Bexley, or I sell in Upper Arlington, or I sell in Dublin, or I sell in this location. I sell all over the place, and we
Mhm.
do all kinds of different business because of our relationships with our clients.
Yeah, that's actually really good interesting thought because I've talked with a lot of people, and I actually talked with a real estate guy maybe like last week, and he actually told me the complete opposite. And I'm interested why you believe in an overview versus like a niche. Because I was talking with this guy, and he was like, you have to niche down. You actually have to go specifically into a region and stay only in that region. Why do you decide that it's better with the general overview?
Well, our region, from that standpoint, our region is Greater Columbus, right?
Yeah.
I don't do any business outside of Greater Columbus. Now, our clients do, and then we help them with making financial decisions outside of Columbus. But we bring on other people to help us with the expertise in those areas. But when you say a region, yeah, we work in Greater Columbus.
Uh-huh.
I don't usually veer outside of it, Greater Columbus,
Yeah.
but I don't narrow it down to one spot in Columbus.
Uh-huh.
Information is pretty wide from the internet and comps and things like that. Plus, we've been doing this for so long, we have a general idea of what stuff is worth where,
Yeah.
and then you could figure it out pretty easily from there.
Okay, and I'm interested because you started since 1997, so you would be about almost 10 years in when it's the 2008 real estate crash. I'm always interested, how did you handle that? How was your response with all now people are getting their houses closed down? How do you deal with that?
Your business changes. You go from selling people their primary residence into then switching over to helping investors take advantage of the bad market, right?
Mhm,
We did a lot of business with investors at that time. People buying houses and buying multi units and um, buying stuff that had excess cash at the time and buying investment properties.
mhm,
Um, and we were doing some investments business before then, but it's sprung to a greater percentage of the business we do, and we still do manage and do a lot of investment business. My background within my insurance and investments and financial management has helped me help people make intelligent financial decisions
mm,
on properties they should buy and sell, and from a financial standpoint, not just, oh, this house is pretty, I'm going to live here because I like the backyard, right?
yeah,
We get more into dealing with, does this make sense for you long term financially? Does it make sense your loan? Because when you're buying a property, typically, when I say typically, most people are buying money,
yeah,
right? And they're buying a house or or a real estate product, right? We also have to talk about the cost of buying money, and are you buying good money, right? Which in layman's terms is getting a loan, but
yeah,
really a loan is you just buying money,
mhm.
right?
That's interesting, I've never heard of it like that.
That's really all it is buying money, right? You're buying money to buy a house, or otherwise you're writing a check. Most people don't have the ability to write a check for their house or their investment property, so they have to go buy the money to do it,
Mhm,
which is one of the crazy interesting things about buying real estate investment products is the leverage behind it. And we talk a lot about the leverage behind buying real estate, which leverage is using other people's money to buy a product that you're going to gain product from.
mhm,
Um, so that's part of a lot of what we do.
Yeah, I'm interested. How did you learn about like was this so 2008 was this when you primarily got your like first real start in investment? Because I looked into now you manage over I think it's like 500 properties. Was this your beginning of investing into real estate or was it earlier also?
No, it was earlier than that. Always had an interest in investing, right? Again, in the stock market, the bond market, and we just moved it from the equities to real estate, right?
Mhm.
And learned about leveraging, right?
Yeah.
And the great advantage of being leveraged, and how if you're buying something for $100,000, to keep numbers simple, you got to put 20% or 25% down. So for every dollar you spend, you get 4 times the amount in product, right?
Mm.
So if you wanted to go out and buy IBM stock, right, and you said I have $25,000, you only get $25,000 of IBM stock,
Yeah.
right? But if you want to buy a piece of real estate, you can get $100,000 worth of real estate,
Mm. Yeah, that's and I've never
right?
thought about it like that.
So if the real estate goes up by 1%, it's really going up. You're really making 4% or 5%,
Yeah.
depending on how much you put down, because of the leverage part of it.
Mm.
And the crazy other thing about it is that when it's rented, somebody else is making the payment for you.
Mm.
So somebody else is building up your equity on your behalf.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
there's a bunch of ways to look at it, right? There's three factors when you're buying an investment property. Um, One is obviously cash flow, cash on cash return, how much
Yeah.
money you making based on your cash flow. The second is appreciation, and the third is mortgage reduction. And we're not going to even talk about the tax advantages of owning real estate,
Yeah.
because those things change for by the administration, but there's also the tax advantages, right? But we don't really get into that. It's just an extra bonus.
Yeah.
Um, Unless you're buying bigger stuff, and that gets a little bit more complicated. But the three economic we're looking at it from a pure three economic values: appreciation, mortgage reduction,
Mm.
um, and like I just drew a blank on the third one. So,
Yeah, you're fine.
um,
Okay, I'm interested in how you go and you approach actually what my first question is you talk about always leveraging these deals and I'm interested do you have a story where you were over leveraged where it was like one of your first investment deals where it was like it went all wrong or has it been
oh yeah, right before the crash, you were allowed to get 100% financing or 95% financing on investment properties,
Hmm,
which means you were over leveraged.
yeah.
Um, so if you bought something for 100, you only had to put 5% down, or 5,000 bucks. So we were selling a lot of stuff like that, right? People were like, "Hey, I want to be in, I want to be skinny, I want to be skinny, I want to be skinny." And banks and mortgage companies were just giving away money like it was wildfire.
Mhm. What do you
Uh,
mean by skinny? Can you
you didn't have a lot of money in the money in the deal,
okay.
right? So if you only have 5% down, and and the the value of the place comes back 10, 15, 20%, you're upside down. Means you're negative,
Oh.
right?
Uh,
So when that happens, you have two choices. You could fight through it, right?
mhm.
And be like, okay, I'm going to make the payments and I'm not selling right now, so it doesn't matter. Or you could walk away because you're making payments on something that has less value than what it's worth. You're negative equity.
Mhm, yeah.
A lot of people had just walked away, and that's what caused the crash, right? Because the loans were bad, they were upside down, and the mortgage companies, you owed more than what the properties were worth, and people were like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just walking away because they had no equity. They were negative equity.
Mhm.
And we've fought through that, and we've kept all those properties, and obviously they've turned out really well. Or you buy more because stuff is now getting really cheap.
Yeah.
And then you could buy more. And I had a lot of clients keep buying more and more and more, because they took advantages of the recession, and at the time, because they still were financially able to get loans and pay for stuff.
Yeah, one thing I'm interested in is about how did you manage with them with so, like, if w let's back then we were in the middle of a recession, how did you give people hope that they would you would be getting out of it? Because it's like, what if it gets worse and worse? Like, what if the home values drop even more? But was it you guys just assumed that eventually it would get better and just invested in the market that it was right there?
Having a financial background and understanding math and understanding that if you can't look at things on a short-term basis because it's a long-term investment, um, every 10-year period, either in the stock market or real estate market, things have increased,
Mhm.
right? So if you bought something, for the most part, generically speaking, if you bought something, you have to wait 10 years before you can look at where how you're doing. So if you look at it in a 2-year period and it's bad,
Yeah.
right? Unless it's really, really bad, you fight. Typically, you try to fight through it. But a lot of people don't do that. They look at everything so short term. But if you take a long view of what you're trying to accomplish, short term waves up or down don't really matter.
Yeah.
Um, you know, because again, you're looking at this from a long term view. So, you're gonna ride the ups and downs.
Yeah. How do you balance that actually? Because I've always been interested. I've talked with a lot of real estate investors, and they talk about having the patience to hold and wait for it to go up in value, but also selling when there's a better opportunity. How do you manage it? Because is every single, I mean, I don't think every single property you buy would be a 10-year hold. So how do you manage which are you going to sell or are you going to keep it all?
So there's a couple of ways of looking at it. One is a return on investment. Second way is a return on equity. Three is, do we think the area is maxed out its value and the property's maxed out its value? And are you sitting not leveraged enough? If the property's gone up way in value and you're not getting a lot of rent, can you do better with that with the capital that's captured?
Mhm.
And if that happens, we will do one of two things. We'll either refinance it or we'll sell it and do a 1031 tax-free exchange and buy something else that can increase that value again.
Mhm.
Um,
That makes sense.
so again, if you're trying, and it also depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right? Not everybody's trying to accomplish the same thing in real estate. Um, People are sometimes buying stuff that they just worried about cash flow, right? Because they want to replace their job, right? And that's only one way to look at it, right? If you want to replace your job, you need more cash flow,
Mhm.
right? If you have a really good job, um, and you're looking to diversify your investment portfolio from out of the equities market, well, you might not care as much about cash flow today. You're looking at to buy it from a net worth standpoint and what's going to appreciate the best and what's going to reduce in mortgage the best,
Mm.
um, and give you the best long term gain, right? Because you don't really necessarily need cash flow. So you have to when we talk to people, we have to figure out what they're trying to accomplish and then match the product in real estate that fits their needs and goals, which is part of what we do, right?
Yeah.
That's why we do so much of that type of business because not everybody is looking to do the same exact thing.
Mhm.
People are looking to do different things. And the same person will do different things depending on how old they are,
Yeah.
right? If you're 28, you're not going to invest the same way as you're 60,
Yeah, it makes
right?
sense.
So I've had clients that I've known since they were 26, 27 years old, and now they're in their middle 50s. Their way of investing today is way different than it was 25 years ago, right? So you got to look at stuff on your current picture.
One thing I'm interested in, so you were talking about 2 different approaches. You're talking about focusing on the cash flow of the property, and then you're also talking about focusing on the appreciation, the equity that's growing in it. How does that change as you get older? Like, if I was a 25-year-old investor versus the 65-year-old investor, how you mentioned they change.
The younger you are, typically you want more cash flow, right? Because
Mhm.
you need the income to continue to grow your portfolio, right? Most people will try to grow their portfolio to a certain amount. Buying one property is great. Owning 10 is better. Owning 100 is incredible,
Yeah.
right? So the way to do that is to keep reinvesting. And the way you have to reinvest is to have enough cash flow to reinvest.
Yeah. So
So as you're younger, you typically buy stuff that's cheaper because one, you typically don't have as much money, right? And
mhm.
you're looking more for cash flow because you need that to grow.
Yeah.
And as you get older, and those properties tend to be a little bit more risky, a little bit more
Mm.
management intensive and a little bit more risky. as you get older and your portfolio gets bigger, you tend to change that, and you shift the risk to a nicer property or a better location or something that has less management that gives you a little bit less cash on cash return,
Yeah.
but offers more stability.
Yeah.
It's no different than it's no different than your equity portfolio. When you're younger, you're a little bit more aggressive in the stock market, and as you're
Yeah.
older, you kind of you take some of the risk off the table and you go into more stable stocks or the bond market that's even stabler,
Yeah.
that's even more secure, right? It's a similar approach.
Uh-huh.
Right?
I'm interested, has that a change in approach, has that happened for you in the way you invest in real estate? Or are you how is your approach now versus maybe back in, like, 2008, 2010?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're buying different stuff, um and I take a little bit more. I shouldn't say take a little bit more risk now, but I can afford a little bit more risk now. Um, because I have my portfolio is really stable,
Mm,
so you could do things that you couldn't do back then because you have more capital, right?
yeah,
And as you own more properties, you wind up with more capital. And when you have more capital, you could do more things because you don't need to worry about it as much if you take a loss or something doesn't go well. So you can take a little bit more risk in that way. Um, so yeah, so no, I mean, I still look for I still look for stuff that's a deal or it's fun to do or it's something different, and
mhm,
because the rest of my portfolio is pretty stable
yeah, can handle it.
and it can handle it.
I'm interested in how so now you manage so many properties, you seem to know so much about investing. While you were building up to this point, did you have any mentors that taught you? Because I've talked with a lot do. Was it mostly a team effort with your uncle, or was there someone that was helping you along the way that was older, more experienced?
Yeah, so my uncle helped me a lot with learning how to invest, and he invested one way. Um, and then I've read other stuff and talked to other older people
Mm,
at the time and saw how they invested because everybody invests differently, right? Everybody has a different model. And what model you look at, um, it depends on which way you want to go.
mm,
So you look at, I took some older people that were really successful,
yeah,
including my uncle, and I'm like, okay, he did it this way, and then he did it that way, and she did it that way, and they did it this way, and then you kind of learn them all, and this way you can help people that are doing that. Um, and a lot of the stuff we manage now, I would say most of the stuff we manage now are from my clients that have bought stuff from me over the years, and they don't want to manage it anymore, right?
yeah,
Because they want to buy back their time. So they
yeah,
pay me and our staff for their time, right, for the
yeah.
management.
I'm interested. So you mentioned your staff. One thing that I've always been fascinated by is there's always an problem with business owners where they have to bring in new people, hiring new people, managing them. How did you deal with that? How do you work with people, like entrusting them with certain delegations because they also buy back your time? How do you trust them?
Absolutely. Um, I love the people I work with. That I will say that. Um,
Mhm.
and I just, you treat them like adults, and you treat them with respect, and you treat them well, and you let them do their thing without babysitting them. Within reason. Obviously they got to make sure things are getting done. Um, but you got to put people around you that you trust
Yeah,
and that you get along with. And you got to treat them well, right?
yeah,
And people in my groups that kind of are right around me have been with me a long time.
yeah. Makes
Um,
sense.
so and and if people need to change, they got to change. But our turnover has been very, very low.
Oh wow, that's really good. Mm,
Um, and just because again we try to keep a nice environment and we try to keep um, you know,
mm.
people like we try to hire good people.
One thing I'm interested in is so you started your brokerage, and for what I believe, it was your property group as well in 2020.
Correct.
Why did you guys decide that time? I mean, if we can remember 2020, pretty crazy year,
Mhm.
and you decide to step out on your own right then.
I thought it was time for me to, um, get out from underneath my uncle's name and put my own spin on things, and that's what we decided to do, go out on our own and continue to, continue it, and, um, just wanted to have more of my touch in the company than ours.
How did COVID affect you guys with all the new restrictions, and you are just starting out at the same time too?
We were considered essential,
Mhm.
so we all showed up at the office every day.
Oh,
Um,
that should be fine.
and people wanted to work from home, I let them work from home. If they wanted to come in, I let them come in.
Mhm.
Um, but, COVID was good in the real estate industry, right? It
Yeah.
was they gave out money, and government gave out a lot of money, and people wound up buying a lot of things, and inventory dropped, and everybody knows the whole crazy story that the wave we've had the last 4 or 5 years. Things are normalizing now. It's starting to be a little bit more normal in the market.
Mm.
Um, but again, I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, I've seen the good. I'm gonna see the bad again.
Yeah.
You're around long enough. There's gonna be great times and there's gonna be storms, and you gotta make sure you're good in the great times, and you gotta make sure you weather the storm, and you're not crazy with stuff.
Mm.
Consistency is key.
Yeah.
Not getting too high and not getting too low.
Yeah. One thing I am interested about is, so right now it's 2025, and I don't know if this is a lot of people, but you hear this on the news: recession coming, recession coming.
Mhm.
How do you approach those fears? How do you prepare your investment strategy? Do you change anything, or are you just going at it as if business is normal? How do you deal with that?
That's a loaded question because there's so many different areas of what we do. From a personal investment standpoint, it's status quo, right?
Yeah.
Our loans are strong. I'm in a good equity position. So from there, we're good. From a real estate sales position or a management, from the real estate sales position, we kind of live in a 90-day window, and I can only predict the next 90 days. So how things are going for the next 90 days is how we make decisions, because I can't make a decision on something I don't know. So if something makes long-term sense in today's current market, we'll pull the trigger.
Mm.
Um, and then from the management's the management, right? It's getting stuff rented, keeping expenses down, and keeping tenants happy as best we can.
Mhm.
Um,
That makes sense.
but from there, you know, recessions have happened. We've lived through them. You know,
We'll get through it
we'll
again.
get through it again.
Okay. All right. So now I want to focus on kind of like your life lessons. Before we talk about the future, like looking back your whole entire experience, you've been doing this for a really, really long time. I think since 1997, that would be almost 28 years. What are some life lessons that you have learned in the real estate investing world?
Biggest life lesson is, um, there's a couple of them. One, time heals all wounds, right?
Mhm.
So if you could last, or if you could keep a property long enough, it'll be okay, right? So the way it kind of works is you buy something, you make no money, you make no money, you make no money. Everybody's like, I made no money, I made no money, I made no money. Well, that's just how it goes, right? In year 5 or 6 or 7, you make a little bit of money. You made some money, you made some money, you made some money. And then in year 15, all of a sudden you're making a lot of money. But you
Yeah.
got to get to year 15. Everybody wants to make a lot of money today. It doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
It's not a get rich quick scheme. It's
Mhm.
a long-term investment. So you got to get to year 15,
Right.
right? And the only way to get to year 15 is to start today. It's the old saying in real estate. Best time to buy real estate was 15 years ago. The second best time is today, right? Because the clock doesn't start. This is where I get crazy when people tell me I want the perfect deal. I want the perfect deal. There's no perfect deal, right?
Yeah.
The perfect deal is one you bought and that you've held on to long enough to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
So you got to get from point A to point B, and point A doesn't start until you pull the trigger.
Mhm. I'm interested. What's like the longest you've held a property? Like
28 years.
28 years?
Uh-huh, and I have clients that have had stuff for a long, long time. And I've had clients tell me they wanted to buy something, and trust me, I've said no,
Yeah.
And, um, and is it worked out? Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's worked out, other times it hasn't.
Mhm.
You know, we can we can go back and look at stuff and, sometimes you're like, "Ah, we shouldn't have bought that."
Yeah.
Right? You keep it long enough and it's okay, but you gotta put the work in. Other times you look at it like, "Oh, this didn't look like a great deal at the time, and it's turned out to be an incredible deal."
Yeah.
Um, but I've had plenty of heated arguments with clients on if they should buy something or not buy something, and usually it's me telling them not to buy something, and they
Mhm.
really wanna buy it because they got outside influence from somebody.
Yeah.
Um And I'm like, "I think this is dumb," right? And they're like, "This is dumb. We're not doing this." And they're like, "We're doing it." I'm like, "I get paid regardless when you buy it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you not to buy it. So I'm telling you that I don't wanna get paid for you buying this, and we're gonna do it anyway?" I go, "That's dumb," right? And they're like, "I'm still doing it." I'm like, "Then I'm still getting paid, and you could be dumb, and this is a"
Yeah, it's just the lost cause.
um,
Uh,
and then sometimes they're like, "Ah, I wish I would've listened," and sometimes it's like, "Ah, see, it worked out okay." But
yeah.
yeah, but again, that we've had that discussion many, many a time, and it's happened the opposite way. I'm like, "This is a great deal. This is a great deal. We should do this."
Mhm.
They're like, "Ah, I don't see it," and I'm like, "Well," right, and then they come back to me 5 years later. I'm like, "Ah, I wish we would have done that deal,"
Yeah.
right? So
It just varies,
it
yeah.
just varies.
How do you deal with that pressure? Because, I mean, you're dealing with people that have a considerable amount of money usually, and they're entrusting you to make sure that they get the best return on their money. Was that did you have pressure in the beginning where you were, like, stressed out, like, "Man, like, I have to make sure, like, they're getting their money, like, I can't have them just lose everything."
Um, so it's no different. Like if you're doing what if you've taken time to get to know the person and try to figure out what they're trying to accomplish and you give them the right product,
Mm,
most of the time it works out.
yeah,
There are other variables, right? Other people get in it and they don't and they and they can't manage it, right? It's not to their personality, right? So we usually try to start out somebody with something easier and smaller in case they don't like it or it doesn't work out, the risk is less. And then
mhm,
as you build up your portfolio, then you can do other stuff. I kind of when people come to me and they've never bought anything and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to buy a 30-unit apartment building and I'm going to manage it myself and I'm going to keep my day job and I'm like, "Whoa, slow down. Slow down. Let's just try to buy a little double or a single family or something small that you know, and see if you like it first.
yeah,
And then go from there as opposed to like starting out huge, right? So you want to build up, right? Um, nobody goes into the I shouldn't say nobody, but most people don't go into the major leagues. They usually start in the minors, work their way up,
yeah,
go to college, or get into some other thing before they get into the big deal, right?
yeah,
So is there a pressure? I don't know. I don't feel that pressure because we've done this so many times, and we try to give as sound advice as you can. And I tell people there's going to be a storm. There's going to be a day when um, You're not you're gonna need to put money back into the product, right?
yeah,
And if you're smart with it, you should be saving that money from when that storm comes. But if you spend it all, then a storm comes, then you're gonna be, it's gonna look really bad.
yeah. I'm interested, you were talking about how if someone wanted to begin with, investing into real estate, how would you advise them as you have now handled a ton of transactions? Do you do this all the time from the small stuff to the big leagues? How would you recommend someone to get started if they had 0 connections prior to it?
Depending on their age, right?
Mhm,
Again, you figure out how to I mean, depending on where they're at in life, right? And that's a big factor. You got to figure out where they're at in life and what they do. And obviously, you don't tell a 25-year-old the same thing as you tell a 50-year-old, right?
mhm,
Um, a 25-year-old, I would recommend what they're calling now online is house hacking, where you buy something as an owner occupant, you live on one side and you rent out the other because it's the easiest way to
mm,
do it. And you get to buy the best money, right? Now,
mm,
if you're 45 years old with 3 kids, You're not gonna
Yeah.
that's not how you're gonna start, right? You're gonna need more capital. So you're gonna buy a different product. Or you're gonna buy different money and you're gonna figure out what product you buy. So, starting out, it depends on where you're at in life,
Yeah.
and that's how we decide how you should start, right? And what type of things you like and how much risk tolerance you have, right? We talk a lot about risk tolerance.
Yeah.
Um,
How much you can handle.
how much risk can you handle, right? Some people are like, I want no risk, right? Well, they're not going to buy this. They're not going to buy in an area that's up and coming because we don't, up and coming areas haven't up and come yet. They're up and coming,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes they don't come. Sometimes they stay bad. When I say bad, the values don't go up. I'm not talking about crime or anything. I'm talking about values, right?
Yeah.
So they might not appreciate as much as we think because the area it doesn't go that way, right?
Mhm.
Or it might go up a little bit and then come back, right? That happens. Stable areas are going to have remained stable in Columbus for 30 years, and they're going to stay stable, right? And if you want a stable investment, you buy in those areas. If you want to take a little bit more risk, you buy in areas that have changed.
Mhm.
Um, and there's plenty of locations like that in Columbus.
Can you give examples of, let's say, go back to even like 2010, 2008, of areas that maybe you thought were up and coming, and now you look at it and you're like, "Dang, I was right." Like that has changed
I'll
complete.
tell you areas that so and when we went, I took my youngest child, Alyssa, to the Italian festival,
Mhm.
right? And we walked through Italian village, and I looked around and I said, "Wow, I could have bought this whole neighborhood for $11 15 years ago." Right? Now it's really expensive, right? But 20 years ago, it was really cheap and not a great location.
Huh.
Now it's hyper expensive, right? When I moved here, the short north
Yeah.
was one of the worst locations in Columbus,
Really? Okay, I didn't know that.
right? I mean, it was run by the Short North Posse, right, which was a gang that ran the Short North, and it was not a good location. Now look at it, right?
Yeah, it's
It's
completely
insane.
yeah,
So,
total transformation.
total transformation. Um, if you could have seen that happen, you could have made a fortune, right? Um, but there's other locations that it's happened to, right?
Mhm.
Those are probably the most notable in the last 30 years, right? Look at Nationwide Arena, how that changed the whole arena district, right? That was a penitentiary.
Oh,
That
really?
was Yeah, that was a penitentiary. That was a prison, right?
Oh,
Now it's one of the expensive areas in Columbus.
huh. Okay.
Oh,
How do you spot, like, even now, so, like, you're investing obviously into the future. When you look into an area, how do you decide, okay, like this area, it's gonna be up and coming, or like this area, it's more and less gonna stay the same, or this one, like the values are gonna fall?
that's tough. I mean, if everybody had that crystal ball, we'd all have a lot more money.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of it's risk. A lot of it's just seeing trends, seeing stuff getting fixed up and seeing stuff. And the earlier you do it, the more risk you take, the more money you're gonna make.
Mm.
Um, one of my bankers is like, Rich, a lot of stuff you buy, I wouldn't loan. I don't really like loaning on, but I trust you because you've been doing it so long. And he goes, by the time I see it, it's too late, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that happens, right? And you know, in areas of some areas have gone well and some areas haven't. And
Mhm.
the city as a whole has matured over the last 30 years, right?
Yeah.
The whole city's doubled in population and grown and done really well. And with that, we're still hyper affordable compared to other cities our size.
Yeah.
We're still under our rents are lower than normal, and our housing prices are lower than the national average.
Yeah.
Which is great. So there's still great affordability in Columbus.
Mhm. One thing I'm interested in is how are you scouting out these areas? Is it more of down boots to the ground, like you're walking around checking out like what's going on in the area? Or is it like big picture overview looking at charts and prices of everything that and how prices have been going?
It's probably I mean, I don't walk around as much anymore. I did for a long time. I'd be in areas and I'd see something and I'd be like, okay, this is cheap and this is going better. And
What would be
now
like a sign? Like if you like we're walking around, you notice like, okay, then this area is going a lot better.
You notice things. So you notice like Children's Hospital is completely different than it was 20 years ago, and that whole area is different now because of Children's Hospital.
Mhm.
So when you started seeing Children's Hospital change, if you started buying properties down there, you've done really well. You would have done really well.
Mhm.
Same thing with OSU East, right? OSU East, when Ohio State bought OSU East, that hospital,
Yeah.
um, they started changing the hospital, and then that whole area around it changed. King Lincoln has gotten a lot better in value wise, right? Um, so you got to notice things like that. Now there's less and less of that available in Columbus, right? Because
It's already all, like,
it,
built up.
it's already a lot built up. Um, now people are looking out towards the Intel plant in Johnstown and those locations to hit the next thing.
Mhm. So what do you look at now since the old stuff you were saying it's a lot harder now? What are you trying to see? Like, oh, okay, this area is getting a lot better. Is it mostly like the new Intel plant or the Androl plant that's getting built eventually in Columbus?
Yeah, I mean, I still as cities grow, the closer you are to downtown, the more valuable they get, regardless of what happens.
Mm,
So, it's still, I still think there's plenty of growth potential inside of Columbus, inside the 270 belt.
mhm,
So we still try to buy stuff inside. And the deal might not look as great, but I still think there's gonna be some growth in there.
mhm.
Um, I just don't know what's gonna happen outside.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
Have you looked into any other cities besides Columbus? Like, I've heard of real estate investors doing going to Toledo, Dayton. Have you considered anywhere else, or is it like, I know my area, I want to stick right here?
So I know Greater Columbus really well. So I
Mhm,
stick in Greater Columbus. Um, the other thing I look for is population growth. If the population's going down,
mhm.
I don't want to buy there,
Okay.
right? They tend to be cheaper, right? You're going to get more cash on cash return today, but if people are leaving the city, the real estate values tend to decline. So then you're looking at buying stuff in a depreciating asset, which is not what the goal is,
Yeah.
right? So maybe you buy something there because you need cash flow and you keep it short term, but I try to stay away from those trends, um, because of population decline.
Mhm.
And
Can you share any trends that you like specifically like target?
I don't have any magic trends,
Okay.
right? I don't, you know, again, a lot of it's just experience and a lot of it's, um, you know, it's just looking at the general numbers behind what you're doing, right?
Mhm.
Um, and looking at stuff from a long-term purview,
Yeah.
right? If you look at stuff from a long-term purview, um, and you understand what's going to happen, most it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Makes sense. Do you have any Can you even share any predictions that you have for, like, the future where you're like, "Okay, I think this area is gonna do good," or is it more of just like, "We'll have to wait and see for now?"
No, I mean, I don't have any magic crystal ball. I think Columbus overall,
Mm,
as a general, is going to still go up, not at the rate it's been the last 4 or 5 years, because it's impossible to keep doing that. Um, but I think over the next few years, it'll still increase some, but at a more realistic rate.
mhm.
But me telling you which neighborhood's going to go up crazily, I don't have that crystal ball.
Okay. Hmm.
I wish I
Very sadly for our
very
viewers,
sad
yeah.
for everybody. Yes,
Mm,
I'm not gonna. Yeah, I don't have that crystal ball.
uh-huh, and I'm interested in the future. So, you've been in this business for a really long time. What does it look 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line? Have you given thought to what is it gonna be? Is it more focusing on the property management side, or is it growing your own real estate portfolio and managing it for yourself only? What does the future look like for you?
Um, my future looks like, um, transitioning to the next generation. Alyssa has joined me. My youngest child has joined me. She's been with me 3 months and teaching her what to do and how to manage stuff and how to sell stuff and how to help people. Um, so hopefully in 5 years that transition happens. And but yeah, we want to just continue to maintain and grow slowly. I mean, we don't look at growing very quickly. We look at growing smartly um and on a steady basis. Um
Mm,
and making good decisions. Right? And that's usually by bringing in more good people um and growing that way.
So you're starting the process to eventually phase out and probably into retirement, from what I believe?
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Okay.
Allegedly.
So read up.
I'll probably have a hand in this for a long, long time because there's really no mandatory retirement.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can still oversee the big picture stuff and hopefully get less out of the day-to-day operation of everything. Um, yeah, but hopefully in some time I could have, other people in place to take care of my clients that I've taken care of, and
Yeah.
they can grow theirs and help them. One of the nice things that we're doing now is we have what, 15 agents working with me.
Mhm.
Um, is helping them grow, right?
Yeah.
And helping the next generation of people succeed in sales and buying stuff and helping them manage their clients and their portfolios. And there's great fun in doing that for people too.
Yeah. That makes sense. For people that are getting started, like in their career, their work life, for people that have just recently finished college or high school, a lot of people on social media love to advertise real estate. They say it's like they say it's almost like as if it's a quick rich scheme.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to people that want to get started, but they are still super young? This is before they even have capital to probably to get their first deal. How would you want them to prepare?
Are you talking about as an investor, or as a salesperson, or as an agent?
As a let's do investor.
Um, well, first you got to get a day job, right?
Mhm.
So you can get some money from a bank, and then you go out and you buy an owner occupant place, either a single family or a double, uh, you know, um, and you start that way, and then you
Yeah.
live there for a few years, and then you do it again. Um, that's the easiest, best way to get started.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about in the aspect of a salesman? Because you have, I mean, from what I hear, it seems like you have mastered sales. You learned it in insurance, and then in real estate, you grew all of this portfolio. You had to have learned sales.
Yeah, we produce at a pretty decent level. You know, the sales part is, again, we talked about this earlier in the very beginning. Cultivating relationships,
Mm,
right? Um, and through that, you'll help people. I don't consider we don't look at ourselves as so much as a salesperson. We look at ourselves as an advisor,
yeah.
right? And we want to take that advisory role to people to help them make an intelligent decision in their real estate dealings,
Mm,
right? From buying a single family house that they're moving into to their investments to whatever they're doing, right? We want to take an advisory role, and help them make intelligent decisions. That's the goal. And with that goal, obviously, we get paid when somebody buys or sells something. Um, but that's the position we take. We want the relationship to be a win-win for both of us.
mhm. Yeah. Okay. And then I guess to end off, what would you say is the biggest life lesson you have learned through this whole entire process? Where, because you have started off in such a different, I mean, it was pretty similar insurance, and then now you're into property management. What would be advice for people to find their thing that they are good at? Because it took you a while for you to find it. How would you recommend for
Well,
people to do that?
so we do more than just the property management. We also, again, we got the sales brokerage also.
Hmm.
Um, we do the management, we do the brokerage. Um, again, look, who I can't remember who said it, but there's no balance in greatness, right?
Hmm.
Um, if you want to make more money, you want to do something, you work more. It's pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
The more money you make, the more you work, the more money you're gonna make. Um, and that's a choice, right? Um, one of the things I preach is we don't use the word can't. We use the word that we choose not to. We use
Mhm,
the phrase we choose not to. I don't believe in can't. I believe in we choose not to.
mhm.
Everything's a choice,
Yeah,
right? You choose how you live. You choose how much you work. You choose what you do with your money. You choose your attitude. You choose you choose everything, right? Now, are there outside factors that affect affect you? Absolutely, but you choose how you handle those outside factors also.
yeah,
So everything in life is a choice, right? And if you choose to have a really nice car, figure out how to go get a really nice car. If you choose to own a big real estate portfolio, choose to figure out how to get a big real estate portfolio. If
yeah,
you choose to have a 9 to 5 job and that's what you want your choice to be, do that, right?
yeah,
But it is a choice. Don't tell me you can't afford something. Tell me you choose not to afford it because you don't want to do the things that it takes to afford it.
yeah,
Um, I have plenty of teachers that on in the summers buy real estate and work on real estate all summer because they have that time off and they choose to use their time to make extra money, right?
yeah,
Um, and so they have it. So it's a profession that where typically, I don't wanna say you don't get rich from teaching, but you don't typically get, quote, "rich" from teaching,
yeah,
but some of these people have made choices to do real estate on the side, and they take their time over the summer and dive into it and go at it, and they make all that extra money over the summer, and they've done that for years, and now they have a pretty decent real estate portfolio because they made the choice of working all summer when they had the time off from school,
yeah,
but that was a choice they made.
yeah.
So you don't always have to make a big salary or a big income to get to the next step. You have to choose how you're gonna do things.
Uh-huh, yeah. I really thank you for the wisdom that you shared with us, especially that last part. That was really good and of how simple it really is. It seems complicated, but a lot of the times it's just choosing to go and work hard and pursue great things. And I thank you for coming on. I thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.